So I woke up this morning and I was immediately thinking about Manchester City Football Club. Sometimes you see a game of football that isn't the most impressive game of football. It isn't the most glittering. The football isn't quite there. The rhythm's not there. And the result is, we won the game, of course, on penalties. But the result itself was sort of forgettable, We'll remember this day. But every now and then there's a narrative that pops up during a game that gets you excited, that gets you thinking about football, that gets you thinking about the reasons you love football. And yesterday, for me, felt like we were witnessing maybe a really memorable game, the birth of a potential moment. It felt a little bit iconic to me yesterday, and I feel like we genuinely could have witnessed the dawn of a new era. It just felt exciting for many, many reasons, which I'm going to talk about today. I think I'm having some issues with the stream. Sorry if I am, but I will crack on anyway. Fingers crossed we'll get through this. But yeah, like yesterday felt memorable for me. It felt like a line in the sand moment. Khaldoon has talked an awful lot in the past how one of his dreams was a Manchester City side full of academy players and local lads, City fans in the side. I don't think there's any really greater goal in football than winning with your own. As much as it's great watching the likes of De Bruyne and David Silva, all these legends, become heroes at Manchester City and earn, statues along the way or whatever, I still feel like the most pure thing in football is watching your team win with Manchester City fans and local lads. There's something romantic about it. It's the essence of football. It's the Hollywood story or whatever. It's so romantic. It's so beautiful. And yesterday, I felt for the first time we saw the seeds of that idea forming. So I want to talk about it, basically. I was going to do a 5 things learned video, but I realised 4 of the 5 things would have been just about academy players. So what's the point? The other 5th thing I would have talked about would have been Bernardo Silva. So I'll get that out of the way. But Bernardo Silva showed yesterday the importance of his experience, the importance of that drive and that determination, and what he could bring through the middle. It was a wonderful little cameo that was nasty. It was aggressive. There was a bulldog spirit to Bernardo Silva yesterday. But he showed what obviously these young lads are going to sort of attain to. So that's what I was going to talk about in the 5 things learned video. So I thought, let's just turn this into the CFA Excellence video instead. I'm not going to tell you everyone was brilliant yesterday from Manchester City's academy. I'm not going to tell you it was 10 out of 10 performances from all of them. But I am going to tell you that I think we are closer to that Khaldoon dream more than ever. Add Phil Foden to this. He could have easily started yesterday. And you're looking at 5 Manchester City academy lads in that team. With 4 of them as Manchester City fans. I know Mcatee, I know O'Reilly, and obviously Bobb's the other one out there. Obviously, that's a Norwegian lad. But I'm seeing the signs, and I'm seeing potential future legacy being born here. Now, I want to talk about all the players individually, and I want to talk about why Guardiola's maybe doing this. I think Guardiola's doing this simply because I think there's an element of the transfers haven't worked with Núñez and whatever, and people like that. So I'm not stupid. I'm aware that maybe we wouldn't be in this situation if certain players had banged or whatever and just connected immediately. But I also think Guardiola's very much aware of his legacy. And I think Guardiola, first and foremost, is a football man. He's obsessed, with football. He really is. And he understands the value and the purity of bringing academy lads through. And I think for years Guardiola was very much out to prove people wrong at Manchester City. He won the Champions League finally, he won the treble, he won 4 leagues in a row. He's basically done everything he can do at Manchester City. And we know how much he loves Ferguson. He talks an awful lot about the longevity and what he achieved. And it's not a big leap to suggest that he's very much aware, of the class of 92 and all that kind of stuff and how impressive it is. And we know Guardiola, he's not afraid to coach young players. He made his reputation, of course, with Barcelona B, and of course bringing the academy lads through at Barcelona's first team. And I do wonder now, given he's achieved everything, and given that the squad, is in a situation where he's got experience there, but there's also gaps for young players. I do wonder if he's thinking this could be a season where he balances that experience with some young lads to give some energy to the first team. And yesterday we saw the signs of that. I'll start with Oscar Bobb. Oscar Bobb is ready. Oscar Bobb is absolutely electric. Oscar Bobb is a ridiculous talent who is going to go far. There is no doubt whatsoever. To me, these are first team. He's a first team player. Guardiola said about Mcatee and Bobb. He said they have the standards to be at Man City. I know them for a long time, and they played really good versus Manchester United. There was another quote. I'll try and find it, but basically he talks a lot about Oscar Bobb, and Oscar Bobb said he's ready and he wants to play more. We saw the signs yesterday of a talent who's absolutely ready for this first team. The technical ability that Oscar Bobb has is absurd. It really is. The way that he moves with such an upright position, with his footwork, just so smooth, so ridiculously smooth. And the deceptive strength that he's got as well. There's a real magic to Oscar Bobb, and there's a real vibrancy. Occasionally you witness, the start of something beautiful. You see it. A player just goes up a level. A young lad just goes up a level, and they announce himself on the big stage. And Oscar Bobb right now, look, he's going to explode this season. I'm absolutely convinced. Like that incredible footwork, so smooth technically. That burst of pace is absolutely devastating. He can go either way. He can use both feet. He's a good crosser. He's got an eye for the pass. It's thrilling to watch him come through right now. It reminds me when Sane burst through and we got very excited because we thought, oh, this guy is special. This guy could... Look, I'm going to say this out loud now, and you can laugh if you want to. But I remember when the first time we saw Leroy Sane start to affect games, and he's a great comparison for a reason because he sort of shows that I don't think what I'm saying is absurd. And I feel like he's Sane is the example and also the caution. But the first time I saw Leroy Sane reach those levels, I think all of us felt like he could maybe be the best player in the world after Messi and co. one day. We all felt that about Leroy Sane. He felt unstoppable. Now, it didn't turn out that he could go to those levels. Leroy Sane is still an excellent player, but he's never quite reached the heights that I felt he maybe could do. But that's not to say there wasn't there potentially. And I watch Oscar Bobb and I feel like he could be one of the best in the world. He absolutely could if he reaches his potential. We're seeing a guy here with absolute mesmeric ability. Like, I don't see any reason why if he played in every game, he wouldn't find a way to affect it. He's just too talented. He's just too talented. There isn't a ceiling for Oscar Bobb. I really believe that. He could be a 30-goal-a-season player that could create loads of goals too. I really think he's that talented. I think his work ethic, his ridiculous focus and maturity, it's really high. Doesn't mean you'll get there, as Leroy Sane, as the comparison proves, but his level, if the stars align for him and he gets the game time, he gets no injuries and everything just happens for him, his level is so high. Like, it could even be better than Phil. We could talk, like, this is the level. Does not mean he will get there, but you just feel a vibrancy and an electric brilliance about a player sometimes. And I feel like, there's a Eden Hazard level ability to this young man. Like, and it's quite scary to witness because I can't wait to witness it. I'm absolutely buzzing to witness it as a Manchester City fan. And every now and then, with Oscar Bobb, and this is a nerdy thing, and you can laugh at this comparison if you want, but I like my superhero films. I'm a massive man-child, and I don't care. I like what I like. And you see that arc so often in a film of that nature where, a superhero realises their power and all of a sudden they become unstoppable. It's in the final act of the film or whatever. And I feel like Oscar Bobb's reaching that stage of his career, man, where he realises what he can do. He realises that he actually can beat anyone. I don't think there's a fullback in the world that can stop him throughout the whole game. I really believe that. He can beat anyone. He's too fast. He's too good. He can go either way. And he's realising just how good he could be. And that's exciting. And I get goosebumps thinking about it because it doesn't mean you'll get there. But if he does carry on in this progression, the Premier League is in trouble. It really, really is. Occasionally you witness a bit of brilliance and it could be special. And I think that's what we're seeing here. And I think Guardiola knows it too. And I don't know how anyone's going to usurp him from that right-hand side. I can't wait to see how it develops. Like, honestly, I think Oscar Bobb is a genuine, potential world-class talent. And I feel like he knows it too. I think he's realising it. When you've got a guy who's hard-working, who's young, and ability, and he has that's what Cameron just said in the chat. It's speed but precision at the same time. He's not Messi, of course, no. But it's like Messi has that, Sane has that, Hazard had that. It's that same level of like to move your feet that quickly at that pace. You can't stop that when he gets going. You can't stop it. And as people said in the chat as well, Martinez is a really good defender. He is. He couldn't get near him multiple times. He couldn't get near him. Oh, man, it's exciting to watch that. And thank you for the super chat from MCFC. Thank you so much, my friend, who said, wrong screen. Bruno G is the final piece in this team, man. He would make us unstoppable if we get him. I absolutely agree, by the way. Put Bruno G alongside Rodri, and you've got a special Manchester City side. 1,000,000,000% agree. I would love him more than anything, my mate. Absolutely. If you guys want to support the channel, super chats are always appreciated. I've got a question for you on the super chats. If you want to reply with a super chat, don't have to. Just a comment is absolutely fine. But which academy player are you most excited about, and why? And after that one, who's going to go the second furthest? I want to know. Not including Foden. Let me know in the comments. But yeah, I agree, mate. I agree absolutely. But yeah, on to Oscar Bobb. Look. It's entirely on himself now. The world is genuinely there for him. And Guardiola always says this. Like, the players get as far as they do. He said it about Cole Palmer. And he said Cole maybe wouldn't be where he is now if he hadn't forced it. And I actually agree with that, man. I actually agree with that. I think the players get where they are because of themselves if they want it. The managers can sort of guide you in a certain way, but the only reason they ever get to the top is because they want it themselves. And for Oscar Bobb, it's absolutely there for the taking. And I'm so excited to watch that development. And I want to talk about Rico Lewis as well. I thought Rico Lewis yesterday had his best game as a pure right back. Don't get me wrong, he still drifted in centrally every now and then. He still popped up everywhere. At one point he was left wing, but yesterday he felt like he was touching that hugging the touchline an awful lot more than he usually did. And I watched back the game and I watched his highlights back, and he's such a ridiculously intelligent footballer. He's only 19 years old still. We forget that sometimes, and I think there's always a rush to anoint someone and a rush to find a spot in the team for a young player. And I hate that I'm going to say this, and you can hate me for this, but I'm going to reference Alex Ferguson, because Alex Ferguson was really good at keeping young players around the squad who could do a job. Then eventually in time they would find their role on the side. I'm going to talk about someone like Darren Fletcher. Like, United fans love Darren Fletcher, and a lot of people around away from the club probably did play him down a little bit. But for many years, Darren Fletcher was a sort of backup player for United, and through experience, exposure to the first team, eventually he found his own and became such a key player for United. Fletcher was brilliant for United by the end of it. And Ferguson was very good at keeping these players around as squad players who cared about the team, who understood how they had to play. And there's a reason academy players can be so useful, because they are so willing usually to be around the team and get it. And they get it. They absolutely get it. And I see the same for Rico Lewis. Do not force Rico Lewis to be a starter right now. Keep him around this squad because he's so intelligent. He might not be the guy who starts every week until he's 22, 23. That's absolutely fine. He'll still play 30 games a season. If he wants to be here, keep him around. And there were signs yesterday of Rico Lewis maturing a little bit too. Now, people complained about Rico with Rashford. I actually felt the urge to defend Rico Lewis earlier this morning on Twitter, because I don't really feel like he was at fault for the goals. And I'll go over to my Twitter thread. This is the chances. This is the first chance here. Where Rico Lewis is stood is exactly where he should be, by the way. If you want him to cover Rashford, he's over here where my finger is off screen. That is not the position for a right back when you've got a back four. They always stay about 5 to 10 feet apart. That is actually technically where he should be. His line is good there. He's in level with Akanji. He's sort of not over-committing either way or there. But he has to tuck in, because when the ball comes back to Fernandes, it looks like Fernandes is going to take a shot and he goes to block it. The real issue with that chance was where you look where Kovacic, you look where Nico O'Reilly are. They've lost Bruno Fernandes, and Amad Diallo's kind of drifted in and tucked to the defence in, and everyone's got sucked in. The problem with that chance came way before the ball went over to Rashford. Yeah, maybe you could argue he could be a metre or two wider. But even if he's a metre wider, even if he's just, Even he's just where my finger was disappeared now. I mean, he's still making his way out to Rashford. I don't blame him at all for that chance. And when you look at the other one, the counter in the second half, here it is. This here is where the ball is played over the top to, is it Fernandez out wide? I can't remember. It was Garnacho. It's Garnacho, isn't it? I can't remember who it is out wide. But either way, if you can see there, Ruben Diaz and Guardiola have got caught massively. The midfield, once again, is turning, facing the goal. It leaves a counter, and it leaves a Kanji, who often was covering that right channel, having to go central, where usually he was covering Rashford, and Rico's a bit further up the pitch. And it's one of those things where, once again, City get turned down this side, the left side of the pitch so quickly that I just don't really blame Rico for that at all. I don't think it's one we can put on him. There's a tendency to go, right back should have left winger, therefore it's his fault. I think that's an oversimplification. I think it is. I don't feel that Rico was massively at blame. So I'm going to talk about Rico now in a positive light. And I think there's some good comments there. From Cameron, who said he's got an unreal mentality, massive football IQ, composed, versatile, humble, and overperforms for his size, incredible competitor, and dealt with Rashford well, considering he's an 8, not a right back. And that absolutely nails it, mate. You're absolutely bang on. I feel Rico makes Manchester City play better when you watch him on the pitch. I don't think it's a coincidence that City's best football often came down the right-hand side. Rico linking up with Oscar Bobb, and then Savinho, of course, for the goal as well. Look, he's such a stupidly smart player. He's got an understanding with the young academy lads because they get it. And I think Guardiola appreciates that. And by the way, guys, 146 people watching. If you can get the likes up, it'd be massively appreciated. Let's get to 115 likes as always. But I want to give Rico his credit because he deserves it. He's such a naturally smart player, and I'm really encouraged by his development. I think he's a better fit for this Manchester City side than Kyle Walker right now. And I'm sorry, Kyle Walker would not defend those chances any better. Maybe his pace would have got him back a little bit for the other one. But Kyle Walker probably would have been on that screenshot here for the second chance. I don't really feel like he would have been any further back than Rico, because Kyle Walker switches off a lot. So I'm not saying he's going to be a world-class right-back, but what I'm saying is that Rico's a footballer that I'm happy if he's on the pitch. He's a smarter footballer than vast majority of this side. And when you watch his technical ability, and go and find a compilation of him yesterday, go and do it, because it's worth watching, you realise how smart he is on the ball and how he uses it. And once again, he's just 19 years old. Would any of you argue this if I said 2 years from now, Oscar Bobb is our starting right winger and Rico Lewis is our starting right back, and we could keep the ball wonderfully and we create so much down that side? You wouldn't argue it. That is a beautifully technical and brilliant right-hand side that all it needs is maturity. Now, of course, and I mentioned it before, so I would be remiss not to mention it. We talk about his physicality or lack of a lot, but he's so tenacious. He's so strong emotionally that maybe Rico can overcome that. If anyone can, it's him. And I also want to talk about James Mcatee. I'm not going to say Mcatee was perfect. He wasn't. I don't think he was. But as Guardiola said, once again, they have the standards to be at Man City. I know them for a long time. They played really good. And he said, I said to Cheeky, I don't want to loan him. I don't want to sell him because I need his specific ability in small places. He completed 97% of his passes yesterday. He hit the post as well. And what stood out for me about Mcatee yesterday, he wasn't electric. He wasn't as dramatic as Oscar Bobb. But I think he was a lot smarter than people gave him credit for. He kept the ball. He blended in a little bit. But I remember when Phil Foden first broke into the Manchester City side. Okay, and he was a lot younger. I get it. But football isn't linear. I'm not going to pretend he's at the same stage as Phil Foden. And Phil Foden was 17, 18. But I remember Phil, when he played central in particular, keeping it quite simple. And keeping it reasonably calm, And I think James is in a similar situation right now. And I really do believe that Guardiola understands that Mcatee has so much ability. Guardiola said this yesterday, and I don't think this is a coincidence. He said every game James Mcatee is getting better, and today he was closer to the Mcatee he can be. I've been watching James Mcatee for many, many, many years. This isn't James Mcatee that I know right now. What I know James Mcatee can do is he can put it in the top corner from 20 yards. He can jink past 2 or 3 people. He can dictate the play. He can turn away from a play and play a lovely little through ball, David Silva-esque. I know he works tenaciously hard, Bernardo-esque at times. And I know he's got a really, really wonderful understanding of football. I know this because I've seen it from Manchester City's academy sides. I've seen him be the best player on the pitch for England's youth side, surrounded by brilliance. I've seen him do it for Sheffield United in the Premier League and in the Championship, and of course nowhere near as consistently as you would expect. But once again, you've got to bear in mind he's still a young lad. I know that talent is there. Will it come through for the first team? There's no guarantee whatsoever. But when you've got that ability, sometimes it's worth just finding out if they can do it. There's no rush with a player like Mcatee. And us as fans, because we're so caught up in the online noise and so caught up in the here and now, we have a tendency to want these young players to do it right now and be the superstar that they could be. And we feel an urge to see it all at once. I don't feel that's the right way to look at it. Guardiola is keeping him around because why not? Like, what if he unlocks that confidence? If Mcatee puts it all together and starts to feel like he can express himself in the way that it took Phil a little bit of time, in my opinion, to feel at home in the first team, then we could see something special. Guardiola knows it's there. I don't think he's saying this for no reason. Like, I'm not saying Mcatee is going to be a superstar. But it's worth finding out. It absolutely is. Not every player just becomes great. And as some players take a little bit of time. And someone mentioned his size. By the way, Mcatee is actually about 5'9", 5'10". And Oscar Bobb is... They're not actually that short. Like, they're actually... Rico Lewis is. But Oscar Bobb is actually a decent height as well. He's like 5'9". Mcatee is actually taller than Phil Foden. I think people are surprised. He's not strong and big, but he's actually a little bit more physically capable than people realise. And he keeps the ball so nicely. He has a good understanding of the movement around him. He's not yet unlocked his ability to totally affect games in terms of creatively, but he could have scored yesterday with some good movement. We saw his link-up play in pre-season, how he can play the right pass. Yeah, he's very much similar physically to Gundogan, I would argue. And he's only 21 still. Let's find out. Because why not? What's the worst that happens? I guarantee you, if Mcatee plays 10, 15 games for Manchester City, maybe 20 for this season, even if he doesn't do incredibly, he'll do well, and that's still a 20 million player. You absolutely will sell him and make money in him, because anyone wants a player that plays regularly as part of Manchester City's squad. And I think Mcatee could get there in time, and Guardiola understands this. I think Pep is trying to get that confidence out of him. Let him believe that he belongs there. And if he does, we could have something special. And finally, I want to come to Nico O'Reilly. Guardiola said this yesterday. He will do better. It's normal. He has to face Casemiro, 5-time Champions League winner. It's his first official game for us in Wembley. Next time he plays, he will do better, but he helped us a lot. Sometimes in the simple thing, which he's so clever, so good at, he missed some balls, but it's completely understandable. I prefer him to take those risks. He's so young, and it's a good experience for him. Guardiola gets it. I want to give you some context, because I guarantee not all of you will be fully mapped out on the journey of Nico O'Reilly. Nico O'Reilly was basically injured for all of last season. And he only played a few games back. So Nico O'Reilly's current match fitness and sharpness isn't even up to standards for EDS. Like, he's not fully Nico O'Reilly yet. He isn't. Nico O'Reilly is also not a number 6 or number 8. Nico O'Reilly, throughout his career, has been a 10 or a false 9. A very creative player. So Guardiola's taking a player that, 1, has no first-team experience, 2, is coming back from serious injuries, and 3, is playing in a new role, and 4, had to do it for his boyhood club at Wembley against all that experience. It's very, very hard. It's very, very hard to come in and be brilliant. Do not get down on Nico O'Reilly having a pretty average, occasionally poor game. I don't think Nico O'Reilly embarrassed himself yesterday at any point. He wasn't good, but he wasn't bad. He was okay. He was average. Sometimes he did good bits, sometimes he did bad bits. But I don't think he embarrassed himself at all. And there's a lot to say for that. I actually got to give United some credit. I thought Casemiro had one of his best games in the United shirt yesterday. I thought Casemiro looked sharp and fitter than last season by a country mile. When you've got the experience of Bruno Fernandes alongside him, Kobbie Mainoo is a good player, of course, as well. And then you've got Mason Mount as well. He's got loads of experience. It was a tough day for Nico O'Reilly, but he didn't embarrass himself, man. He didn't embarrass himself at all. And Nico... will learn so much more for this. He'll learn so much more from playing for his boyhood club at Wembley than he will in 15 EDS games. And if Guardiola sees something, there's no greater compliment than that, you know? And there was a couple of times, as Andrew said, where Nico skipped past Casemiro too. I always try and look at academy lads and look at what they can do as opposed to what they can't do. If I see a little bit of brilliance, I know that's what Guardiola can see in training. And I guarantee you, by the way, Nico probably does better in training than he does in a game. And there's a reason for that, you know. Training's easier. You're more comfortable. The CFA's at home. He's been with those players now for months now. So do not worry about Nico O'Reilly. But instead try and reframe your thinking. And don't presume you know more than Guardiola. I've already seen people say, "Oh, you won't make it at City. He's not good enough." I don't get how you can make that conclusion, man. I've seen world class players have stinkers on their debut, and it's one of those things where, like, you know, I always take my mind back to one of the worst debuts I've seen. Actually, remember Patrice Evra for Man United when he got absolutely battered by Trevor Sinclair, like, of all people, you know, And he looked like a terrible player. It turns out, even though he's a weirdo, he was a world-class left-back for years for United. And he ended up brilliant, you know? And I always remember thinking Trevor Sinclair gave him a run around. And that happens to anyone. Nico O'Reilly is there on merit because Guardiola's seen something. And I guarantee he'll be a damn sight better in training than he was yesterday. Do not get worried about Nico O'Reilly and be encouraged instead that he's in the squad. I'm not going to say he's going to start every week. He's not. He's a backup player. But if he plays 5 to 10 games or whatever for Manchester City this season when he's gone from the EDS, that's really encouraging. Big Carabao Cup games. And absolutely, his mum's tweet, by the way, was beautiful. I'm going to try and find the comment, but there's a really, really adorable comment from his mum. I don't know if it's on here. There we go. She said, "I've never felt a feeling what I felt watching you today, Nico. You did amazing. Wembley, Man City, Derby debut. Whoa, I'm the proudest mum in the world." It's beautiful, mate. It's absolutely beautiful. And as a parent, I sort of can feel that, you know, that love there as well. You've got to remember what a big day it was in. He had his whole family watching, the whole world watching for him, and he played his debut against the team that he grew up hating, for the team that he loved. It's a ridiculous moment for him. And he overran the ball a few times. He gave away the ball a few times. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But there is talent there. And Guardiola, keep him around. We will see how it goes. And I'm excited. I really am. I felt like yesterday showed what could be. We need patience, and I think some ahead of more ahead of others. But I would love it more than anything if Guardiola decided to keep these young lads around the squad. And I'm not going to say they're all going to start. I think some of them will start. But if you add these 4 to Phil Foden, there'll be times when 3 or 4 academy players, maybe 5 if we get lucky, will be starting a game for Manchester City Football Club. I'm going to be honest, like, for me right now, we've watched Manchester City do everything. I want to see Guardiola build a legacy that way. I want to see Guardiola integrate these lads. I don't want him to compromise. I don't think he will. Guardiola will never compromise success. He'll play these if they feel they deserve it in the moment and if it'll push Manchester City forward. And I feel like we could be witnessing something special here. The birth of it. It felt like a big day yesterday for the CFA, and I absolutely loved it. Guys, let me know, of course, in the comments what you made of City yesterday. I enjoyed it. Sometimes the narrative in a game is worth discussing. And I could have talked about Savinho more and Bernardo and whatever. But this yesterday was about those academy lads. Yesterday was about them putting down a marker and showing that they are potentially the future of Manchester City Football Club. There is no guarantee. There is absolutely no guarantee we'll get there. But I don't know. To me, witnessing that, like, that is what it's all about for me as a football fan. That is a story. That's emotion. That's love. That's love for the club. Absolutely. It's love for the club. And Andrew, where can I find them, mate? Like Nico's message. I'll try and find it right now because I want to see it. But that to me is love for the club. And I am buzzing. I am buzzing. It's one of those things where, you know, it means more to some. It means more to some players. And Nico O'Reilly, look, he understands it. I'm going to try and find Nico O'Reilly's Twitter. I don't know where it will be. Has anyone found his Twitter? Can anyone link it in the chat? If they know it. Because I'd love to see his comments or whatever. It's like City fans paying for the shirt. Here we go. I found some. He said, a dream come true making my professional debut for my boyhood club and getting my first piece of silverware. Absolutely, lad. Absolutely. He's a big lad, and he really is. Go on, lad. Look at that with Pep. Beautiful stuff. Guys, thanks for watching. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, if you enjoyed it. And I want to do more of these Let's Talk type videos where it's not a review, it's not a 5 things learned, it's just a topic that I care about passionately. And this I do care about. I'm sorry. It means more to me when you see players from the Academy lad win. It does. And yesterday they won. In a bit, come on you Blues.